When a case requires a lot of in-depth analysis, I like to review the case and lay out different options that the students might lean towards. I typically try to find 3 or 4 possible outcomes and then see if I can get the students to kind of lean towards each outcome and figure out ways to get them to explore those outcomes within the classroom. Oftentimes you can list outcomes, but the students won't choose one of the outcomes you previously thought about. Don't worry about that. Let them explore their ideas and see if you can get them back on track to finish out the case.
So inevitably, when doing any type of quantitative analysis, there will be times when the numbers don't add up or there's confusion amongst the students. And the way I normally handle that is just to let them wrestle with it for a little while. I think a little bit of back and forth in the classroom is okay, because a lot of the times through that, they'll end up coming to the right answer. But if they don't, that's where the preparation really comes into play, and making sure that you've done the analysis ahead of time so that if you need to step in and walk the students through the process, that you're prepared to do that. Or the alternative would be through that back and forth, if you get the sense that there is somebody in the room that really understands it, bringing them forward to walk the students through that as well.
So a moment of truth for any professor is that time when you have to do a quantitative analysis before the room. And part of that is you're thinking through in the moment the analysis itself, which takes a certain amount of cognitive ability, but you're also thinking through the performance that's going on, the conversation that's going on simultaneously. And so it's very, very difficult. You know, I've got a few suggestions. One of them is, as best you can, do and understand the analysis cold before you walk in the room. And by that I mean 2 things. I mean, understand the expected and in fact the correct path to the analysis you'd like to do. But also think through alternatives that might get you to the same answer or might get you to wrong answers, because those will also come into the room in a Socratic style. People will recommend ways of doing something. Some of them will be the one you thought about, some won't. Some will be accurate, some won't. Now, I'll tell you a story. In one of the very first years that we were operating in one of our correctional facilities, we had one of our sharp MBAs, John. And John was in front of the room, and he was explaining a break-even analysis. And he actually drew out the algebraic equation for a break-even on the board, and he was walking the group through the break-even. One of the participants became incredibly animated, in fact, angry. And as he listened, what he got upset about was that John, while having derived the break-even point in one fashion, he had himself derived a very different way to get to the very same number. And in a way, his way looked a lot easier. And his anger and his engagement, which is what was so great about it, he was so engaged that he was angry. Is he got up out of his chair, he comes to the front of the room, and he says, oh, well, you could do it this way. And he wrote out his equation and showed that he got to the very same number. Now, for John, this was a fascinating moment. I think he was both encouraging, but I also think he was a little embarrassed. And I think the cautionary tale here is, as best you can, you're going to have a teaching plan, review it. As you do, think through, there are some other ways someone might get to the same thing, or could they do it a different way?